Hi there, I'm Jesse from Miro, and in this quick video, we're going to cover how Miro Flows and Miro Sidekicks can help you and your teams accelerate the time it takes to do rapid prototyping. Now, if you're not familiar with Miro Flows gives you and your team the ability to chain together and templatize multi-step workflows directly within the canvas that are fully powered by AI. Let's now take a look at this example in more detail. Now, this all starts with a pre-built Miro template that's been specifically designed to help us to accelerate this process. But remember that everything I cover today is just an example, and you can easily customize Miro Flows and Sidekicks to fit your specific ways of working. Let's now use this template and take a look at how it helps us to accelerate this process. Great, and just like that, we can now see that our multi-step flow template has been deployed. And if we zoom in here to the actual template overview, we can see that all that we need to do to use this template is to provide Miro with a few key inputs, such as your brainstorm outputs, accessibility requirements, so on and so forth. And then Miro Flows will do a lot of the heavy lifting and generate these 5 meaningful artifacts for us. Let's take a look at this in action. Great, so here you can see that we've brought in some of those key inputs for us to use for the prototyping. We've brought in some sticky notes from a brainstorm, a Google document that's been embedded with accessibility requirements, some company branding, a Google document that outlines the problem statement success criteria, and an embedded PDF with technical and scope constraints for this actual prototype. And now what we can do is actually use all of those as the inputs for Miro Flows to leverage as it starts to execute the creation of the downstream artifacts. And thanks to the power of Miro Flows, you now have the ability to actually add on-format prompting for every single Miro format. So in this case, we're asking Miro Flows to take all of those inputs and then use them as the actual context to execute this on-format prompt and then generate the output of this prompt in the document below. And with Miro Flows, you also have the ability to select the AI model of your choice for any given format. If you prefer text generation with GPT, but image generation with Claude, we give you all of that flexibility within our platform. You also have the ability to connect Miro Flows to company knowledge bases such as Amazon Q, Gemini Enterprise, Microsoft Copilot to help you bring important company context into the canvas without ever having to leave Miro. And you can connect Miro Flows to actually go in and search the web for you. Ultimately, what Miro Flows does is it brings AI into you and your team's flow of work. So you can actually collaborate as a team with AI instead of doing it individually in silos when you're working with an LLM. Here, you and your team can see the prompts that are leveraged, the inputs that the AI is using, the model that you're running, and you can really start to collaborate as a team with AI instead of doing it on your own. And now that we've added these inputs to the board, all that we have to do is hit run on the first stage of the flow, and you're going to now see it's kicking off a 5-step workflow where it's going to first build us our PRD, a first prototype for us to review, a second prototype for us to review, a backlog, a table reviewing the prototypes against our accessibility requirements, and then ultimately a document that's suggesting which of those 2 prototypes we move forward with. So let's come back once all of this has been completed. Great, so after about 90 seconds, all of this content has been created for us. If we zoom in here, we can see that our PRD has been generated. The first version of our prototype's been built out using Miro Prototyping. And if you're not familiar with Miro Prototyping gives you the ability to create multi-screen mobile, tablet, or web application designs that are fully configurable and editable. So in this case, all the text can be changed, the colors can be changed, the buttons can be changed, the connection between buttons and screens can all be adjusted, and you can jump into a preview prototyping mode to instantly go in as if you're actually using this mobile application to help you accelerate the speed of iteration as you figure out how to build the right thing. And if we keep going through, you can see that a second prototype has been built out that looks similar, but is slightly different to help us to evaluate different options as quickly as possible. We then have a table that's been brought in that's actually reviewed the prototypes against our accessibility criteria to help us figure out what we need to fix. And then lastly, Miro Flows has gone out and helped us to evaluate between the 2 prototypes which one we should use as we move forward. And one of my other favorite things about Miro Flows is that with Miro Flows, it's really easy to actually edit artifacts in the middle of a flow and then rerun the flow from there to update the downstream artifacts with those changes reflected. If you were doing this in an LLM, for example, you'd have to scroll way up in your chat or potentially even start from scratch. Let me show you how easy this is by leveraging an AI sidekick to come up with additional feedback for us to incorporate on this prototype. Great, so you can see that I now have the Sidekick side panel open here, and I'm actually using our Design Prototype Sidekick. But sidekicks are no-code AI agents that can collaborate with you on the canvas based off of a specific persona. We're using the Design Prototype Sidekick here because that's the right persona for this job. But you can actually go to our Sidekick library and see hundreds of other sidekicks that are ready to go to help you with specific jobs to be done. Or you can also easily create your own sidekick based off of your actual ways of working. But in this case, we're going to use the Design Prototype Sidekick to help us get additional feedback that we can then feed in downstream to the rest of the flow. And one of the best things about sidekicks is that they can actually use the canvas as the prompt. So here I can select this prototype. You now see that the sidekick has one object selected. And then I can actually also select our PRD. And I can ask it to come up with additional pieces of feedback for us. And it's only going to review the 2 pieces of content that I've given it access to on the canvas. I didn't have to do any additional copy pasting or prompting because it can use the canvas as its prompt. And now I can just hit run. And what's going to happen is the sidekick is going to come in, look at what I've asked it to do, review the 2 pieces of content I've given it access to on the board, and then give us additional suggestions on what we could do to improve this prototype. Great. And just like that, you can now see that the Design Prototype Sidekick has come onto the board. It's created the document with additional pieces of feedback. We can now add that to the canvas, and we can now use this as an additional input for our flow, but starting at this stage, not way back at the beginning. And now that we've added that document into the flow, we can then hit run from here. And instead of kicking off a 5-step flow, we're now just kicking off a 2-step flow. But in this case, it's now going to take this additional information and use that as an additional input as it executes these last 2 stages of the flow. And while we did this with the sidekick, this is a great example of how you're able to keep the human in the loop as you're using Miro Flows, because you and your teams can come in and iterate on content in the middle of the flow and then instantly see those changes reflected downstream. Now, that was a quick example of how you and your teams can use Miro Flows and Miro Sidekicks to accelerate the time it takes to come up with prototypes. I hope it was a helpful overview, and if you'd like to see this in more detail, please book a demo with a member of our team who can show you this in depth. Thank you.